The 2020 instant classic Scoob is a movie that conjures up feelings of the deepest, darkest existential threat to the unsedated human consciousness. Scoob is a movie about love, friendship, and sacrifice to satanic evil. Scoob is when you alienate all your friends and family in order to live out a hedonistic life of pleasure-seeking, uncritical of the far-out effects of your decisions. Essentially, Scoob is an average Saturday afternoon. It's horrifying and will live on as one of the great cultural horror films of all time. The Exorcist, The Conjuring, The Shining. Scoob.
Death and existentialism. It's the end-all be-all of human existence. A concept most children 6 through 10 are naturally familiar with. What were you doing at 8 years old if not having frequent panic attacks over the idea of your own inevitable mortality? If I had Scoob when I was younger, maybe I wouldn't have turned out to be a stone-cold narcissistic capitalist with an appetite for crushing my opponents with the strength of 1,000 suns. Or worse, a YouTuber. Look, I know I need to regain your trust on this, considering that if you're familiar with the Mia Cole lore in the slightest, you know that me and Scooby don't have the best track record. The guy's been subtweeting me ever since I called him an incel, but you know what? I'm sorry if you're offended, liberal. He has the beta skull.
Scooby-Doo is an incel, and here's why. Yes, for the love of God, I'm still on this. Look, I know this is confusing, but just trust me, okay? Just trust me. This is all gonna make sense, I promise. In this movie, Scooby abandons his friends as he lusts after money, fame, and power. He's seduced by the allure of his close proximity to these traits via his connection to both prominent ancient political figures as well as modern-day superheroes that are reminiscent of, however, legally distinct from Disney-affiliated properties. This is admittedly a pretty alpha move, and you might even think that miraculously Scooby turned into a top G. However, outside of this facade of greatness, on the inside, Scooby is vulnerable and emotional, making him still ultimately a beta male. In fact, within this movie, Scooby's girlfriend is completely erased from the canon, along with some major animation changes that make the cartoon dog distinctly unpleasurable to look at. In conclusion, this extra dimension of animation fundamentally turns Scooby into a sub-5. And combining that with his weak will and easy attraction to misogynistic male role models, it's easy to see why he'd take the red pill. Fuck you, subscribe to my Patreon. Okay, so why does this conjure up feelings of death and existentialism? Well, I'm glad you asked. Here's what you need to know. Okay, so first and foremost, this movie is bad. Scoob is, unfortunately, to use a contemporary phrase, not good.
Tank empath brain.
She said the funny word. On RottenTomatoes.gov, this movie is summed up by stating, and I quote, "It's fun enough for youthful viewers and some hardcore fans, but never quite solves the mystery of why audiences shouldn't just watch old episodes instead." Woo! The shade I feed on the sheer spite of it all. Okay, so why bad? First and foremost, the characters are watered down into bland amalgamations of the attributes that they're loved and known for. And I know what you're thinking. Mia, I'm pushing 30 over here. I don't give a singular fuck about the Scoob movie. And to that, I implore you to, for the love of God, shut up. This is important. This is media. This is analysis. This is culture. I am an artist. I am lightheaded. Look, just stay with me here. Just trust me on this part, and then I'll be able to explain to you why death and existentialism fit into this, okay? Got it. I'm just pumping you full of retention and engagement right now, aren't I? But I ask you this, are you not entertained? This movie has a few stark deviations that are important to keep in mind. First and foremost, Shaggy loses his stoner persona. I guess weed was deemed not very marketable to children. And most importantly, they de-ossified Velma. What happened to our bisexual queen? I wrote that line just to get people mad in the comments. Give me all the engagement you want, I'm not taking it back.
I got my foot in frame for free? For free?
And then of course they added a superhero element for the people that are into that sort of thing.
Honestly, it's really just disgusting.
Look, I don't care if you watch Marvel behind closed doors, obviously. Just keep it out of children's media. This is indoctrination and I won't stand for it. Now, for those of you who didn't have the privilege of seeing this godforsaken film, what is this about? Give me 36 seconds on the clock. Welcome to the Free Speech Zone. Scoob is a movie that follows the Mystery Incorporated gang from childhood to adulthood. They solve a myriad of extremely important, bizarre crimes undertaken by the most devious of children's media caricatures whilst attempting to be both self-aware and irreverently funny at the same time. Also, Simon Cowell is there. It's then discovered in some form or another, honestly I don't remember how, that Scooby-Doo is a distant descendant of Alexander the Great's dog Peritas, stay with me here, who is apparently real and supposedly valid. Thus, they meet superheroes, battle with villains, and then naturally travel to Athens, Greece, where they fight Cerberus, yes, that Cerberus, in an attempt to close the gates to hell. Got it? Good. Okay, so I know what you're thinking. What? The fear of death is the motivation behind almost every human phobia. Mortality is horrifying because of our genetic programming. It feeds on our brain's anxious response to the idea that someday we could not exist anymore, thus creating a strong aversion to the concept in general. So why does all of this fundamentally apply to the 2020 critically acclaimed animated feature film Scoob? Well,
hell and the underworld are prominent concepts in most of the world's major religions. In Scooby-Doo, it's depicted as a physically tangible place, accessible by a door. Scoob is a Warner Bros. Movie, so they didn't want to like hit the religious iconography too hard. The idea of being trapped in such a place, no matter what your religious beliefs are, would naturally invoke fear in anyone, as eternity is already such an impossible concept to grasp. Adding that element of the idea of eternal torture is obviously an impactful combination, and it's probably enough to get 2 Utah teenagers to chill out for a bit.
What the fuck?
Sometimes I write things and I'm like, who wrote that? I didn't write that. The underworld is the prison of prisons, standing in the presence of omnipotence and being judged not worthy of further enlightenment. It's abandonment, it's loneliness, and it's pain. It is, in itself, the final signifier of failure, of a life of wasted potential, proving to you and everyone else that your own worst thoughts about yourself were in fact right, and you are not a fundamentally good person, and therefore are unworthy of happiness for the rest of time. So in the Scooby-Doo movie, no, for real, okay, so basically, in the Scooby-Doo movie, the final heroic battle is between our boys and the ancient Greek mythical Cerberus, a giant dog with 3 heads. The characters are tasked with fighting Cerberus and trapping him back in the underworld, fundamentally showcasing why Scoob is actually an allegory for the fear of diversification and advocates for anti-immigration policy. No, I'm just messing with you. That sounds like something I'd say though, right? Just keep that one in the back of your mind. So naturally, these 5 teenagers defeat the mythical powerhouse Cerberus in like, you know, a good 5 minutes. And now they must seal the gates of hell in order to seal their world back into its proper state.
Okay, so basically the lore is that Alexander the Great built this door to the underworld, right? But for some reason only made it accessible between him and his dog Peritas. And since Scoob is a descendant of this dog, they have to be the ones to close it. Note that Scooby is a direct descendant, but Shaggy is still just some guy, so whatever. It's in this moment that we realize the true fundamental horror of this film. This ancient figure built this portal to seal off the underworld, thereby making it a permanent one-way door. The gate needs to be closed by someone on Earth and someone in hell, thereby permanently trapping them on both sides, meaning that one of them is gonna effectively have to fucking die. And yes, I'm purposely using the word die here. Even though their consciousness is still active, being trapped in hell brings a sense of metaphorical death in that their soul is no longer worldly. So when I watched this for the first time, I was like, whoa, they have to kill one of the characters. We get to watch them be told the news in real time that one of them is gonna have to unalive in order to save the world. The characters are obviously floored, and I myself am entranced by the very concept alone. I mean, look, I'm all for a little in-universe punishment for sin. Retributive justice is my drug, and I don't believe in harm reduction. I'm basically the 21st century Hammurabi. But this is horrifying. In a selfless act of friendship, Shaggy volunteers himself with the reasoning being that Scooby saved him from his childhood depression, being lonely and unloved by the world. He was rescued from self-hatred and isolation, and thus is willing to let go as the ultimate showcasing of gratitude for his best friend, knowing he had the best years of his life, and that's worth it to give up the rest. Why am I fucking crying? Jesus.
But naturally, they fight over this decision, displaying that their love for each other fundamentally supersedes the natural human inclination to fear mortality. They are willing to make the ultimate sacrifice for each other. Now at this point, I'm overwhelmed. I have to take a break. I'm looking up Scooby-Doo Shaggy friendship edits just to feel normal again. And next thing I know, I'm on DeviantArt. God damn it, guys. This is why we can't have nice things. Shaggy wins this fight, and we watch as these two say goodbye to each other forever, desperately hoping and praying that some kind of third act twist will occur. I'm staring at the time code at the bottom of the screen, hoping it'll somehow be extended just a few more minutes in order to escape the emergent reality that this childhood character is gone forever. That this movie isn't just a final gasp of air from an intellectual property that's meant so much to me over the years and has done so much for creative expression. I am enthralled at the spectacle of it all. In grief, this is called bargaining. I'm sure some of you are quite familiar. But then, it all goes quiet. What's done is done, and the characters huddle around Scooby to comfort him as he collapses under the hopelessness of it all. Your best friend is gone. Life as you know it is gonna be different forever, and there's nothing you can do about it. So now I kind of feel bad for calling him an incel.
Scooby-Doo is an alpha Chad, and here's why. In the 2020 instant classic Scoob, Scooby-Doo is a based Marxist-Leninist proletariat queen. I don't know. Scoob exhibits frequent alpha behavior throughout this movie, from selflessly throwing himself into the line of danger, all the way to converting his friends into alpha male sympathizers via exposure therapy. Edit Andrew Tate unveiling closet haunted house scene. Mia, what the fuck does that mean? He may have done a few sketchy things that sure might not have been covered under the Equal Rights Amendment, but we've all done a few constitutional loophole crimes here and there. I'm not gonna judge anybody for that. His skull even retook the alpha shape, proving once and for all that he's better despite this loss. Remember, depression isn't real and going to the gym is a totally justified means of coping. Scoob is the best movie of all time, 10 out of 10. I see no flaws.
Scoob is a movie that teaches us a lot about Western ideas of death, namely that we don't deal with it very healthily. Mortality is a big theme throughout this movie, and it's represented as this impending cloud of doom. After Shaggy's death, the cloud's literally clear. Athens returns to its corroded state, and also Simon Cowell is revealed to be the bad guy. Based, absolutely. British people are the literal devil, as we know. All in all, this movie is a really positive representation of the fear of death and how mortality functions within us. Living life to the fullest is the most important thing, and sitting around obsessing over our own death is not healthy. And that's why I've never respected the philosophes. We said goodbye to Shaggy, and most likely the franchise. In a way, the acceptance of mortality within this movie might actually be one last nod from the creators at the audience about the legacy of a property and knowing when it's time to say goodbye. Or at least it would have been if they didn't bring him back to life. Are you fucking kidding me? I went through all this emotional turmoil for nothing? Because you can't commit to the very idea that life itself is fragile? That we must continue to play into this delusional fantasy of living forever? As if none of this is valuable? What's the point of all of this if you're not going to challenge the ignorant fallacy of existence? The false conception. The idea that because you're scared, you don't have to think any deeper about the meaning of life. How fucking naive. How are you going to do anything useful in this world if you refuse to accept the idea, the unabashed, harsh reality, the deep, dark, existential idea that someday you, dear viewer, yes you, will escape the vacuous expanse of consciousness to an eternal emptiness, one of which no one knows the meaning of? Does that mean nothing to you? Like and subscribe. Bitch. Sorry, I didn't mean to call you a bitch. You're cool. I like you.